What's going on, people? Reveal season is really chugging along, so we're going to try and keep up to date. So we're going to cover another, I forget how many I queued up today. I think it's 6 or 7 cards we're going to talk about. You all already know how we rock this. We're going to scale it from, or score it, I should say, from 1 to 5. Or in between, because I am a very indecisive boy. We'll give our thoughts on the cards, we'll all have a good time, and then we'll get the discussion going in the comment section below. You guys have been killing it, by the way. I want to thank you guys for that. The support on the videos, the likes and all that stuff. I know I don't talk about it too often, but you guys are absolutely killing it. And I've been really enjoying reading your guys' comments in the comment section, talking to each other. I've chimed in a little bit. Honestly, you guys have been far more active than I can even keep up with, which is absolutely bonkers. But enough with the mushy stuff. Again, thank you, though. We'll get on into the reviews. Let's get things started. First card is Lord of the Arena, where Siege Crawler was a nerf for tinkering. This guy is actually a buff. 11 cost, 8/8, so stat to cost isn't super fantastic, but it's kind of okay. Summon ability, choose two creatures to battle each other. Now, there's something you need to keep in mind with this. It just says 2 creatures. It doesn't say choose a friendly creature to battle an enemy creature. So I'm guessing, and I'm fairly confident in saying, that this creature's summon ability can cause 2 opposing creatures to battle each other. So this would be a potential 11 cost, kill 2 enemy creatures, and summon an 8/8. This is a very, very good card. This is another great card to summon for tinkering, because tinkering, you want your 11 cost to be a somewhat guaranteed board clear or, stabilization tool. So this is a buff for tinkering. This guy can be Squish the Wimpy on a body if you want. If you have a slay creature on board, you can target your slay creature to battle an opposing creature, and you're left with an 8/8. You can use it to... very fringe scenario, but you can have a friendly creature battle another friendly creature if you need to. That's way more fringe, but it's still a possibility if you need like a Desperation Blood Magic Lord spell or something like that. I guess it's still a thing you can do. But I think the highest power, highest swing scenario with this card is you're going to make 2 enemy creatures battle each other. They'll kill each other. You're left with an 8/8, and even if this thing just straight eats removal the next turn, it's like an 11 magic, a 3-for-1. That's pretty solid. I think this is a very, very powerful card. I think it'll be great in slower decks. There's not a ton of... Let me close Discord real quick. There's not a ton of red-based control decks. And by that I mean there's not a ton of control decks that focus on red. But I think this could be a card that fits into it. And it's a card that fits into Slay synergies. And it's a card that rewards you for having things on the board. Or I guess punishes your opponent for having things on the board. But honestly... I think I would give this card a borderline to I'm somewhat confident 5-star card. The only time that this card won't be good is if games aren't going long or there's no focus on the board anymore. In which case, I wouldn't fault this card for that. I still think this is an incredibly high power card. It's up there with quite potentially being the strongest card in the set, in my opinion. Revealed so far, that is. Next up, we've got our Aranthia Gorilla, 3 cost, 3/4, and it has lethal on your opponent's turn. So 3 cost, 3/4 is okay stat-wise. You're not complaining about it. You feel better about a 4/3 because it fights better, trades up better, but this at least survives Ice Storm and Crushing Blow. Additionally, you don't feel as bad. Well, it's a little awkward, though, because a 3/4 would be a little bit better if it always had lethal. Because then you could say, yeah, it doesn't have 4 attack, but it can even trade up if it needs to due to having lethal. However, it only has lethal on your opponent's turn, so it kind of winds up as like a iffy card in that scenario. I don't know, this kind of feels like an arena card to me, if I'm being completely honest. Because a lot of the lethal synergies that you'd want, being Crossbow, Gambit, even Rage, things like that, obviously they need to trigger on your turn. So this card only having lethal on your opponent's turn kind of makes it a vanilla 3 cost 3/4 unless your opponent needs to trade into it, which I feel like won't be as super common. Maybe if you're a more aggressive mid-range deck and your opponent has to trade into you, this card can be okay. But in general, this card looks like pack filler / arena pick to me. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh on it, but just you need to have lethal on your turn so you can dictate the trades. a lethal your opponent can play around is not a super powerful lethal in my opinion. I think I can give it like a 1.5 stars for the power it'll have in Arena. I think it'll be a decent Arena card, but overall I don't think this card is that great. Next up, we've got Dead Drop. It's a 0-cost action, so it's another action into our Saran Pawnbroker slash, nobody plays it anymore, but Smuggler's Hall pool. Give a friendly creature Slay, put a completed contract into your hand, so that's the same Slay effect as Brotherhood Slayer, but it's only for the turn, and it may move to attack creatures in the other lane just this turn. So this card is interesting. It's a pretty flexible card. It's kind of like a Move in Shadows mixed with a Bushwhack kind of thing. Not quite Bushwhack. It's kind of like Move in Shadows with Brotherhood Slayer's effect on a body just for the turn, which is, you know, pretty decent. And it's a 0 Magicka card that can replace itself with a completed contract, so it's not quite replacing itself fully because it's a card replacing itself with 1 Magicka, which isn't quite a 1-to-1 scenario, but, you know, it's still, you're getting something for it at least. But I don't think this card is quite horrible. It's probably pretty good in, like, aggressive market decks. But yeah, I'm not seeing a ton. It's one of those things where occasionally you're going to grab this from Pawnbroker and it's going to be really, really, really good. But it's not the kind of card that I think you're going to run in most decks, if any. Maybe in like a Slay deck you can run this as a 1-of to try and ramp quicker when you're not playing your Brotherhood Slayers. But I think the card slot is going to more often want to be taken up by something else. So I think the main use for this card is going to be something like some sort of Swindler's Market deck. This card doesn't cleanly fit into any exact market deck that I can think off the top of my head. But this is a 0-cost card that can potentially generate a 0-cost card. So I don't want to completely count it out. I think I would give this card like a maybe 2 stars for some combo potential. But I don't want to run this in any specific deck that I can think of at the moment. Next up, we've got Unicorn. This card has been splitting everyone that I've talked to or have seen people talking about. It's a 3 Magicka 2/3. Friendly creatures in this lane with less power than Unicorn have charge. So, there's a couple things to keep in mind. It is whatever Unicorn's power is at the given moment. So you can equip an item to this and your threshold for creatures that can gain charge will go up. So there's a ton of combo potential with this card. This card plus an empty deck and like Bandari Opportunist is a potential OTK. Obviously it's a very fringe use, but just that's where my mind went first because you guys know how I think. Gives use to a lot of cards like Cicero can gain charge from this, just raw. Arcane Venom Tongue can gain charge from this, just raw. Zivkin Banelord, which isn't as important, but it still can gain charge with this. And this card just gets better with buffs. Like I think it's very solid as it is. You know, being able to give your Fighters Guild Recruit charge is not nothing. A lot of the times you play your Fighters Guild Recruit in front of a big threat of your opponents, and you kind of just hope that they have to trade into your Fighters Guild Recruit. Whereas with Unicorn, you don't have to hope. You can just trade right away as long as that card is, you know, not in cover. So that's something to keep in mind. There's a lot of 1-attack creatures that, while not bad, could definitely use a little push. And this definitely gives a push to Unrelenting Siege decks as well. It allows you to go face twice right away. And that's the one thing that deck kind of struggles with, is kind of pushing more once you don't have a board anymore. So Unicorn definitely helps with that. But things like throwing a Steel Scimitar on this, so any creature with 3 attack or less can gain charge, is huge. That kind of will skyrocket the power of this card. Even just a Steel Scimitar unlocking 3 attack or less kind of widely opens up the card library versus just 1 attack. Even something like a Divine Fervor or 5th Legion Trainer, 2 attack, while not as wide as 3 attack, still does quite a bit. I think this card is phenomenally strong, will activate a lot of power, whether it be in combo decks or just decks that have, you know, those 1-attack lethal creatures. This can turn those into kind of pseudo removal spells, and maybe they even survive and stick behind. I think this card is going to have a ton of flexibility and a ton of utility, and that's not counting any other one attack creatures that may get revealed. I think this is like a 4.5 star card. Anything that can give things charge for free, guaranteed, is not to be overlooked. I don't care that it's only one attack right now. Anything that can give charge, you need to be wary of. In my opinion, anyway. Next up, we've got Bloody Hand Chef. This is my pick for probably favorite card in the expansion so far. It's a 2 magic, a 2/2 goblin. Whenever you reduce an enemy creature's power or health with an effect, this card gains that much health or power. So, what that means is if this card is on the board and you use Sheer Point Dragon and you give an opposing creature -2/-2, Bloody Hand Chef will gain +2/+2. So this card is just incredibly interesting. Now, there's obviously a bunch of, like, interesting applications for crazy combos of, like, I don't know, if you generate a power of the CV, or, you know, I don't know, Zivkin Banelord can gain this thing a ton of health. But if you're wanting, like, combo OTK-ish applications, you're going to want to be reducing power. So that would be, what's that card called? Lay Down Arms, I think, does power and health, and I think there's also one that does power. Things like Cloud Rest Illusionist and Calm could do fantastic things for Bloody Hand Chef. I think this card kind of already fits into, like, Wound Scout that has already been pretty decent on the ladder, and this just gives you a threat. Whereas Wound Scout does great at answering threats, but doesn't have tons of threats of its own. I also think that this could fit into some sort of revitalized curse package and maybe even like a monk deck. And all those curses can buff Bloody Hand Chef as well. I just think this card is incredibly interesting. It has an incredibly cool effect, and it's one that I cannot wait to play with in as many decks as possible. Power level wise, I don't think it's through the roof. I think it's one of those cards where maybe you're going to activate this effect once or twice and it's going to get removed. But it's definitely not a dead card. I'd give it probably like 3.5 stars, maybe even 4 stars. We have enough reduction effects that this card can definitely get really annoying, and we're going to have more reduction effects, I'm sure. And again, people are going to play this card because it's just fun and interesting. Next up, speaking of reduction effects, we've got 3 Feather Warchief. It's a 3 Magicka 1/3 with summon, set a creature's health to 1. So, this is kind of like, I think, Weakness on a stick. So I think that's a 2 Magicka spell that reduces a creature's health down to 1. So this can set up any creature to trade into it or get cursed afterwards. This effect does trigger with the chef to gain that much health when this guy reduces something down to 1. Alternatively, you could combo this card with Unicorn, reduce a creature's health down to 1, and then 3 Feather Warchief can charge into it, since you'll gain charge from the Unicorn. And this would be like a 3 Magicka Javelin, more or less. So all 3 of those cards have synergy together. This card is, like, decent. I don't think it's super great. I think at 2 Magicka, this card would be incredible. 3 Magicka, it becomes a little bit tougher of a sell. I still don't think this is a bad card. I just think it's one that at 3 Magicka, you're going to struggle to fit into a deck and feel good about it because you're putting a 1/3 on the board. And nobody really ran Weakness beforehand or any of those actions that reduce things down to 1. So I think this card, even with it being on a body, will struggle a little bit to find a home. However, if Wound Scout, like, completely takes off, this could just be another feather in that cap. No pun intended with the 3 Feather Warchief. But this is going to be one of those cards that kind of fits in those decks more so than makes those decks happen, in my opinion. So this card is probably like a 2, maybe 2.5 star, but probably closer to the 2-star card range. It's one of those cards where I think it can fit into that strategy if that strategy takes off, but it's not going to be the thing that makes that strategy exist. This will just be like along for the ride rather than leading the charge, in my opinion. And finally, we've got Emperor's Attendant, 2 Magicka 1/1. Give a creature in your hand power and health equal to Emperor Attendant's power. So this is similar to, there's the Ambitious Hireling, I think, in Willpower, 2 Magicka 1/1. Give another creature on the board power and health equal to that Ambitious Hireling. This card gets kind of interesting because it can buff chargers from hand and stuff like that, and it doesn't have to you don't have to have something ready on the board for the buff. This card has fantastic synergy with Rally, because you can rally this guy and then pass the rally stats onto another creature, getting double rally value. Obviously things like Divine Fervor and all that stuff is just icing on the cake of Emperor's Attendant. However, you're not going to be able to super reliably buff this guy on turn 2, so it's a 2 Magicka card that you don't really want to be playing on curve. You're probably going to want to be playing this card at the earliest on like turns 3, 4, 5 if you have some rally creatures down. which does bring down the value of this card a little bit. Ambitious Hireling runs into a similar issue, however. Maybe this fits into like a tokeny Spellsword deck that wants to pass buffs all around. Takes advantage of 5th Legion Trainer and stuff like that. I just think this card is going to be capable of creating some incredible highlight plays and maybe even like a combo at some point, and maybe I'll definitely mess around with it to try and pass a buff from this guy onto a large charging creature. But overall, I don't think the power level on this card is super high. It's not a dead in the water type of card. It's just kind of iffy in my opinion. So I'd give this card probably like a 1.5 to 2 star rating. It's not completely dead. I think there may be some combo applications for it in the future, just not at the moment. But yeah, that's another 6 or 7 cards down, and I think I'm still behind, so we have to keep chugging because I know more cards will get revealed tomorrow. My card reveal will be on Tuesday, October 1st, in case you guys were curious. I shared the spoiler both on Twitter and on Reddit if you guys aren't on there. But yeah, looking forward to that. Looking forward to reviewing more cards. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments section. As always, thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.